Mother bear tangled in soccer net. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning sun peeked through the trees at Pinewood Village Park, casting dappled light on the abandoned soccer field. Savannah Reed sat on a faded picnic blanket, watching her 6-month-old daughter Lily play with a soft toy. The baby gurgled happily, her chubby fingers gripping the colorful rattle. Savannah smiled, taking a sip of her coffee as she enjoyed the peaceful morning. She loved these quiet moments before the village woke up, just her and Lily surrounded by nature. At the edge of the park, where the manicured grass met the wild forest, a rusty soccer goal stood forgotten. Its net hung torn and tangled, swaying gently in the spring breeze. Years ago, children had played here every weekend, their shouts and laughter filling the air. But after the new recreation center opened on the other side of town, fewer people came to this old park. Nature slowly reclaimed the space, and wildlife from the nearby forest grew bolder, sometimes venturing into the clearing at dawn and dusk. Deep in the woods behind the park, a mother bear named Luna by the local forest rangers moved carefully through the underbrush. Her dark fur shimmered in patches of sunlight, and her heavy paws made almost no sound on the forest floor. Behind her, a small cub tumbled playfully, stopping to investigate interesting scents and sounds. The pair had woken hungry. Winter had ended weeks ago, but food remained scarce, and Luna's instincts drove her to explore the forest edge, where humans sometimes left things to eat. Luna paused, raising her nose to sniff the air. She caught a familiar scent, sweet and artificial. Food wrappers. Her memory told her that where humans gathered, there was often food left behind. The forest had provided little this morning, and her cub needed nourishment. With cautious steps, she led her baby toward the edge of the trees, toward the abandoned soccer field and the picnic area beyond. Savannah checked her watch and sighed. She had promised to meet her friend Jessica at the village coffee shop in an hour. She began gathering Lily's toys, unaware of the movement at the forest edge. Lily, however, seemed transfixed by something beyond the blanket. Her small face turned toward the soccer goal, and she pointed a tiny finger, making excited sounds that caught her mother's attention. "What is it, sweetie?" Savannah asked, following her daughter's gaze. Her heart stopped when she saw what had captured Lily's attention. At the edge of the field, partially hidden by the morning shadows, stood a massive bear. Beside it, a small cub pawed at the ground curiously. Savannah froze, her hand instinctively moving to pull Lily closer. She had heard stories about bears in these woods but had never seen one in person. Her mind raced with half-remembered advice about what to do during wildlife encounters. The mother bear hadn't noticed them yet. Her focus was on the soccer goal, or, more specifically, on something caught in the tangled net. Luna approached the strange human object cautiously, her cub following close behind. The net swayed in the breeze, and something shiny was caught in its twisted ropes, an empty potato chip bag, its metallic interior glinting in the sunlight. To a hungry bear, even the lingering scent of food was worth investigating. As Savannah watched in horror, the mother bear rose on her hind legs to reach the net. Her massive paws batted at the tangled ropes, and with each movement she became more entangled. The frayed strands wrapped around her front leg, and when she pulled back in surprise, the entire goal frame shuddered. Luna let out a confused grunt that quickly turned to a distressed growl as she realized she was caught. The more she struggled, the more the net tightened around her powerful limbs. The cub, sensing its mother's distress, began circling anxiously, making small whimpering sounds that carried clearly across the silent park. Savannah knew she needed to act fast. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone, but in her panic it slipped from her fingers and fell among the grass. Lily, oblivious to the danger, continued to watch the bears with wide-eyed fascination, her tiny hands clapping together in delight. Luna's struggles grew more desperate. The net, already worn from years of exposure to the elements, began to tear in places, but not enough to free her. With each thrash and pull, the soccer goal tilted dangerously, its rusted frame creaking under the strain. The sound echoed across the park, startling a flock of birds from a nearby tree. The cub, frightened by its mother's distress, began to cry out with small, pitiful sounds that tore at Savannah's heart. Savannah spotted her phone in the grass and slowly reached for it, careful not to make any sudden movements. She needed to call for help, but she also knew that any wildlife rangers would take time to arrive, time that the mother bear might not have if she continued to panic and struggle. Already, Savannah could see that the net was cutting into the bear's thick fur, and specks of blood appeared where the rusted metal parts of the goal had scraped against her skin. Just as Savannah's fingers closed around her phone, the unthinkable happened. Lily, who had been sitting quietly watching the scene unfold, suddenly pushed herself onto her hands and knees. Before Savannah could stop her, the baby began crawling toward the entangled bear. Savannah gasped, her body frozen in terror, as her daughter moved with surprising speed across the grass. "Lily!" No exclamation mark, Savannah cried, her voice breaking with fear. She lunged forward, but in her panic she stumbled, giving Lily precious seconds to continue her determined journey toward the bears. The mother bear turned her head at the sound of Savannah's cry. Her dark eyes locked on the approaching baby, and for a heart-stopping moment time seemed to stand still. Luna stopped struggling, her massive body going very still as she watched the tiny human crawling closer. The cub, curious now rather than fearful, moved toward Lily, its small nose twitching with interest. Savannah scrambled to her feet, every instinct screaming at her to run to her child, to snatch her away from danger. But something in the mother bear's posture made her hesitate. Luna wasn't showing aggression. Instead, she seemed almost curious. The same maternal instinct that made Savannah want to protect Lily was visible in the bear's watchful gaze as she looked from the approaching baby to her own cub. Lily reached the edge of the soccer goal area and stopped. She sat back on her bottom, looking up at the massive, entangled bear with wide, innocent eyes. Then, to Savannah's astonishment, Lily smiled. It wasn't the practiced smile of an adult, but the pure, unguarded smile of a baby who sees not danger but simply another living being. The baby let out a happy coo, reaching one tiny hand toward the bear cub, who had ventured closer, equally curious. The cub sniffed at Lily's extended hand, then made a soft sound that seemed almost like a greeting. The mother bear watched this interaction with what looked remarkably like maternal concern, her struggles momentarily forgotten. In that strange, suspended moment, Savannah saw something she would never have believed possible: a connection between two mothers, two babies, bridging the vast divide between human and wild animal. But the moment couldn't last. Luna shifted her weight, and the net tightened again, causing her to let out a pained growl. The sudden noise startled both Lily and the cub. The bear cub scampered back to its mother, pressing against her leg, while Lily, startled by the loud sound, began to cry. The cry broke the spell. Savannah rushed forward, scooping Lily into her arms and backing away from the entangled bear. But as she retreated, she couldn't help noticing how the mother bear seemed to be watching her. Not with aggression, but with something that looked almost like understanding. Holding Lily tightly, Savannah knew she had to do something. The bear was suffering, and if she escaped in her panicked state, she might become a danger to herself, her cub, or others. With trembling fingers, Savannah dialed the local ranger station, praying someone would answer quickly. "Wildlife emergency, how can I help?" A calm voice answered after 2 rings. "There's a bear," Savannah said, her voice shaking. "At Pinewood Park. She's caught in the old soccer net. She has a cub. Please, you need to come quickly." "Stay calm, ma'am," the ranger replied. "Is anyone in immediate danger?" Savannah looked at the bear, still struggling against the net, and the cub now pawing anxiously at its mother's leg. "No," she said, "but the bear's hurting herself trying to get free. We'll send someone right away. Stay well back, and don't approach the bear under any circumstances. Help will be there in about 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Savannah looked at the struggling bear and wondered if that would be soon enough. Already, Luna's movements were becoming weaker. Whether from exhaustion or because the net was restricting her breathing, Savannah couldn't tell. The cub's cries grew more distressed as its mother's struggles slowed. Lily squirmed in Savannah's arms, her small face still turned toward the bear's. She made insistent noises, reaching out as if wanting to go back to them. Savannah held her daughter tighter, whispering soothing words, though she wasn't sure if they were for Lily or herself. "It's okay, sweetie, help is coming. We just need to wait." But as the minutes ticked by, it became clear that waiting might not be an option. The mother bear's struggles were growing weaker, and her breathing seemed labored. The cub circled its mother in obvious distress, occasionally tugging at the net with its small teeth, but making no progress in freeing her. Savannah looked around desperately. The park was still empty. No one else had arrived for morning walks or picnics yet. She was alone with her baby, a trapped mother bear, and a decision that needed to be made. In the distance, the faint sound of a car engine broke the morning silence. Hope surged through Savannah. Maybe help had arrived earlier than expected. But when she turned toward the parking lot, she saw not a ranger vehicle but a familiar blue pickup truck. Connor Adams, the village handyman, was pulling into the lot. Connor was known throughout Pinewood for his gentle nature and skill with fixing just about anything. He had helped Savannah last winter when a fallen branch had crashed through her kitchen window during a snowstorm. Connor stepped out of his truck, toolbox in hand. He had come to fix the park's broken water fountain, a job scheduled weeks ago and completely unrelated to the current crisis. He hadn't noticed the bears yet, his attention focused on gathering his tools. Savannah waved frantically, trying to catch his attention without shouting and further alarming the trapped bear. Luna let out another pained groan as the net dug deeper into her fur. The sound finally caught Connor's attention. He looked up, his eyes widening as he took in the scene before him. Savannah holding her baby, the trapped mother bear, and the frightened cub. He froze momentarily, then carefully set down his toolbox and began walking slowly toward them, keeping a cautious distance. "Savannah?" he called softly. "Are you okay? Have you called the rangers?" "Yes," Savannah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But they won't be here for at least 15 more minutes. I don't think she has that long, Connor. She's getting weaker." Connor assessed the situation with calm, practical eyes. At 35, he had lived in these mountains his entire life and had encountered bears many times, though never in circumstances quite like these. He knew the dangers, but he also understood these animals better than most village residents. "The cub complicates things," he said quietly, moving to stand beside Savannah. "Mama bears are fiercely protective. Even if she's weak, she might find strength if she thinks we're threatening her baby." As if understanding his words, Luna turned her head toward them, her dark eyes reflecting a mixture of fear, pain, and maternal concern. The cub pressed closer to its mother's side, whimpering softly. "We need to do something," Savannah insisted, bouncing Lily gently in her arms as the baby began to fuss. "Look at her, Connor. She's suffering." Connor ran a hand through his sandy hair, considering their options. "I have wire cutters in my truck. Strong ones. I might be able to cut through the net." "That's too dangerous," Savannah protested. "You'd have to get too close." "We may not have a choice," Connor replied. "If she keeps struggling like that, she'll either strangle herself or tear up her legs so badly she won't be able to hunt or care for her cub." While they debated, Lily had grown increasingly restless in Savannah's arms. The baby's eyes remained fixed on the bear cub, and she kept making insistent sounds, reaching out toward the animals. Suddenly, she let out a particularly loud babble, almost like a word. The sound carried across the clearing, causing both the mother bear and her cub to look directly at them. To everyone's surprise, the bear cub took a tentative step toward them, then another. The mother bear made a low sound that might have been a warning, but she was too entangled to stop her curious offspring. Connor tensed, ready to intervene if necessary, but Savannah placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Wait," she whispered. "Look." The bear cub paused about 10 feet away from them, its small nose twitching as it sniffed the air. Lily continued to make excited noises, bouncing in Savannah's arms. Then, in a moment that would later seem like a dream, the bear cub sat down on its haunches and made a soft huffing sound, almost like a greeting. "I've never seen anything like this," Connor murmured, amazement replacing fear in his voice. "It's like they understand each other." The mother bear watched this interaction with what appeared to be resignation. Her struggles had weakened considerably, and her breathing was becoming more labored. Time was running out. "Connor," Savannah said urgently, "get your wire cutters. I think if the cub stays calm, the mother might too. At least long enough for you to cut her free." Connor hesitated, weighing the risks, then nodded. "Keep Lily quiet, and if I tell you to run, you run. Don't look back, just get to your car as fast as you can." He backed away slowly, then turned and jogged to his truck. Each second felt like an eternity as Savannah watched the mother bear's condition deteriorate. The once powerful animal was now slumped against the goalpost, her massive head drooping with exhaustion. Only her eyes remained alert, following Savannah and Lily with wary attention. The bear cub had remained where it sat, occasionally making soft sounds in response to Lily's babbling. It was as if the two babies had formed some kind of primitive communication, a language that transcended species. Savannah found herself wondering if this remarkable connection might be their salvation. Connor returned with a large pair of bolt cutters and a tarp. "I'll try to cut the main strands first," he explained in a low voice. "The tarp is in case I need to create some kind of barrier between us and her." "Be careful," Savannah pleaded, clutching Lily tighter. Connor nodded, then began his careful approach. He moved with deliberate slowness, making no sudden movements that might startle the injured bear. The bear cub watched him with curiosity but showed no signs of alarm. The mother bear, however, grew visibly tense as Connor drew closer. A low growl rumbled in her throat, and she lifted her head weakly. "Easy, Mama," Connor soothed, his voice gentle and steady. "I'm just going to help you out of this mess." He was now close enough to reach the edge of the net, but still several feet from the bear herself. Carefully, he positioned the bolt cutters on one of the main strands of the net. The metal blades gleamed in the morning sunlight as he prepared to cut. What happened next occurred so quickly that Savannah would later struggle to recall the exact sequence of events. The mother bear, seeing the metal tool so close to her, made one final desperate attempt to free herself. With a surge of adrenaline-fueled strength, she lunged forward, her powerful jaws snapping at the air mere inches from Connor's arm. Connor jerked backward, losing his footing on the dewy grass. As he fell, the bolt cutters flew from his hands, landing with a clatter directly beside the entangled bear. The sudden movement and noise startled the bear cub, who scrambled back to its mother's side, crying out in fear. The mother bear's renewed struggles became frantic, shaking the entire goal frame. The rusted metal creaked ominously, threatening to collapse entirely. "Connor!" Savannah cried, stepping forward instinctively, then forcing herself to stay back for Lily's safety. Connor scrambled to his feet, backing away from the agitated bear. "I'm okay," he assured her, though his face had gone pale. "But I dropped the cutters. Without them, I don't know how we'll free her." The situation now seemed impossible. The bolt cutters lay tantalizingly close to the net, but retrieval would mean getting dangerously near the panicked bear. The mother bear's renewed struggles were clearly causing her pain, as fresh blood appeared where the net cut into her fur. Her distress communicated itself to her cub, who began pacing and crying more loudly. Then, amidst the chaos, Lily did something that stopped Savannah's heart. The baby squirmed so violently in her mother's arms that Savannah momentarily lost her grip. Lily slipped downward, and before Savannah could recapture her, the baby had pushed herself onto the grass. With surprising speed, she began crawling directly toward the bear cub. "Lily!" Savannah's scream tore through the morning air. She lunged forward, but Connor caught her arm. "Wait," he said, his voice tight with tension. "Look at the bears." Incredibly, both the mother bear and her cub had gone completely still. The cub watched Lily's approach with what appeared to be recognition, while the mother bear's eyes tracked the baby's movements without any sign of aggression. It was as if they remembered the connection that had formed earlier, before Connor's arrival had complicated the situation. Lily reached the bear cub and stopped. The two babies regarded each other with solemn curiosity. Then, in a move that would later be described by Connor as the most amazing thing I've ever seen, Lily reached out and gently patted the bear cub's nose. The cub responded by sniffing Lily's tiny hand, then making a soft, almost playful sound. "They're playing," Savannah whispered in disbelief. "It's distracting the mother," Connor observed. "Look how she's watching them instead of struggling." It was true. The mother bear had temporarily forgotten her own predicament, her attention fixed on the bizarre interaction between her cub and this human baby. Her breathing had steadied, and though she was clearly exhausted, the wild panic had left her eyes. "This might be our chance," Connor said. "If she stays calm watching the babies, I might be able to reach the cutters." "No," Savannah said, surprising herself with her firm tone. "It's too risky. If she suddenly remembers you're there, then what do we do?" Connor asked, frustration edging his voice. "The Rangers are still at least 10 minutes out. She might not have that long." As they debated, something even more astonishing occurred. Lily, apparently tired of sitting, began crawling again. But instead of coming back toward her mother, she moved toward the fallen bolt cutters. "Oh my God!" Savannah breathed, her body tensing to rush forward. Connor held her back. "Wait, just wait." Lily reached the bolt cutters and examined them with typical baby curiosity. Her small fingers traced the metal handles, too heavy for her to lift. The mother bear watched, her eyes never leaving the small human now, just feet from her entangled limbs. The bear cub, emboldened by Lily's proximity, ventured closer to the strange metal object as well. Then, in a moment that would later be described by Savannah as divine intervention, Lily grabbed one handle of the bolt cutters and pushed. The tool slid a few inches along the grass, directly toward Connor. "She's helping," Connor said in amazement. "Savannah, your daughter is actually trying to help us." Lily pushed the bolt cutters again, grunting with the effort. The bear cub, as if understanding the game, nudged the tool with its nose, helping it move a bit further. Inch by inch, push by tiny push, the bolt cutters were moving away from the dangerous zone near the bear and toward the humans. When the tool had moved about 3 feet, still not close enough for safe retrieval but clearly on its way, the mother bear suddenly shifted. Her movements were weaker now, but no less determined. As she twisted, the net tightened around her neck, and she let out a choked sound that sent a chill through Savannah's body. "She's choking," Connor said urgently. "The net's around her throat now." The bear's struggles became weaker, her massive body slumping further. The cub, sensing its mother's increased distress, abandoned the game with Lily and rushed back to the bear's side, pawing desperately at the net. Lily stopped pushing the bolt cutters and sat back on her bottom, watching the cub with what looked remarkably like concern on her small face. Then she turned toward her mother and Connor, making insistent sounds and pointing at the bears. "She knows," Savannah said, tears welling in her eyes. "Somehow, she understands they need help." Connor looked from Lily to the weakening bear, then made a decision. "I'm going for the cutters. They're closer now, and she's too weak to attack. It's our only chance." Before Savannah could protest, Connor moved forward in a low crouch. His eyes never left the mother bear as he inched toward the bolt cutters. The bear watched him, but her eyes were growing dull, her struggles now merely weak twitches. When Connor's hand closed around the tool, she made no move to strike. "Got them," he whispered, backing away slightly. "Now for the hard part." The cub continued to paw at its mother, whimpering pitifully. Lily watched from where she sat, unusually still for a baby her age. It was as if she understood the gravity of the moment. Connor took a deep breath, then moved toward the entangled bear with slow, deliberate steps. "Hey there, Mama," he said softly. "Just going to help you out of this mess." The mother bear's eyes followed him, but she no longer had the strength to resist. When Connor carefully positioned the bolt cutters on the main strand of net around her neck, she remained still, her labored breathing the only sound besides the cub's whimpers. With a powerful squeeze, Connor cut through the first strand. The tension released immediately, and the bear took a deeper breath. Encouraged, Connor moved to the next strand, then the next. With each cut, the net loosened its deadly grip. "It's working," Savannah whispered, hardly daring to believe it. She had edged closer, ready to grab Lily at the first sign of danger. The mother bear seemed to understand that Connor was helping her. She remained still as he worked, her dark eyes watching his movements with what almost looked like trust. The cub, sensing the improvement in its mother's condition, grew calmer, though it stayed pressed against the bear's side. After what seemed like an eternity but was probably less than 5 minutes, Connor cut the last strand holding the bear captive. The net fell away, revealing raw, bleeding patches where it had cut into the animal's fur. "There you go," Connor said, backing away slowly. "You're free now, Mama." The mother bear didn't move immediately. She seemed to be testing her limbs, making sure she was truly released from the trap that had nearly claimed her life. The cub nuzzled her face, making soft sounds of what might have been relief. Savannah reached Lily and scooped her up, cradling her daughter close. "You amazing, reckless, wonderful little girl," she whispered, kissing Lily's forehead. "How did you know?" Lily babbled happily, reaching a hand toward the bears again. The mother bear slowly rose to her feet, shaking herself carefully. She was unsteady but alive. Her gaze moved from Connor to Savannah and Lily, then back to her cub. For a long moment, the two mothers looked at each other across the divide of species, a silent understanding passing between them. Then, with a gentle nudge to her cub, the mother bear turned and began walking slowly toward the forest. The cub followed, but not before looking back at Lily one last time and making a soft sound that seemed almost like goodbye. As the bears disappeared into the trees, the distant sound of vehicles announced the ranger's arrival. Connor let out a long breath and wiped his brow. "They're not going to believe what just happened here," he said. Savannah looked down at Lily, who was watching the spot where the bears had vanished with wide, innocent eyes. "I'm not sure I believe it myself," she replied, "but I know what I saw, and I'll never forget it." The rangers' vehicles pulled into the parking lot, doors slamming as they hurried toward the soccer field. Their help was no longer needed for the bear, but Savannah knew they would want a full explanation of what had transpired. How could she possibly make them understand the connection that had formed between a human baby and a bear cub? How could she describe the way Lily had somehow known exactly what to do to help save the mother bear's life? As Connor went to meet the rangers, Savannah held Lily close, whispering into her daughter's ear. "You're special, Lily. Somehow, you understood what no one else could, and because of you, that little cub still has its mother." Lily gurgled happily, her attention already shifting to a butterfly that fluttered past. But Savannah knew that something extraordinary had happened in this park today, something that had forever changed her understanding of the connection between humans and the wild creatures with whom they shared this world. Little did she know that this remarkable morning was only the beginning of an even more incredible journey, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about her daughter, herself, and the mysterious bonds that sometimes form between the most unlikely of companions. Behind them, the empty soccer net swayed gently in the morning breeze, threads of bear fur caught in its tangled strands, the only physical evidence of the miracle that had just occurred. The rangers approached, notepads in hand, ready to take statements about the bear encounter. Connor was already explaining about the tangled net and how they had managed to free the animal before any serious harm was done. But he carefully omitted the most extraordinary details. The connection between Lily and the bear cub, the almost human understanding in the mother bear's eyes, the way Lily had somehow known to push the bolt cutters toward them. Some things, Savannah realized, were too precious, too magical to be reduced to incident reports and wildlife management statistics. Some things were meant to be held close to the heart, like secrets shared between mothers across the boundaries of species. As she prepared to tell her version of events to the rangers, Savannah glanced down at Lily. The baby had fallen asleep in her arms, tiny fingers curled into fists, her face peaceful. Looking at her daughter, Savannah wondered what other wonders this remarkable child might bring into their lives in the years to come. For now, though, the morning's adventure was enough. A mother bear and her cub were safely back in the forest where they belonged, and Savannah had glimpsed something rare and beautiful, a moment of pure connection that transcended the barriers humans had built between themselves and the natural world. The head ranger, a tall woman named Morgan with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, approached Savannah. "Mrs. Reed, I understand you were the one who called this in. Can you tell me exactly what happened here?" Savannah looked at Lily, then beyond the ranger to the forest edge where the bears had disappeared. A smile touched her lips as she began her story, a slightly edited version that protected the magic of what had truly occurred. "Well," she said, "it all started when my daughter noticed something by the old soccer goal. What Savannah didn't notice, as she began recounting the morning's events, was the small, shiny object lying in the grass where the bear cub had been sitting. It was a flat, smooth stone with unusual markings, almost like symbols etched into its surface. The stone glinted in the sunlight, waiting to be discovered, waiting to reveal the next chapter in a story that was far from over. The truth was, their encounter with Luna and her cub was merely the first thread in a tapestry of mysteries that would soon unfold in the quiet village of Pinewood. Mysteries that would center around a remarkable baby girl who seemed to possess an extraordinary gift for communicating with the wild. 3 days after the bear incident, Savannah sat in her small kitchen, stirring honey into her tea while watching Lily play with blocks on the colorful mat beneath the window. The morning light caught in her daughter's wispy blonde curls, creating a halo effect that made Savannah smile, despite her exhaustion. She hadn't slept well since their encounter in the park, her dreams filled with bears, tangled nets, and Lily crawling toward danger with inexplicable purpose. The local newspaper had run a small story about the rescue, crediting Connor with quick thinking and bravery. Savannah had asked him not to mention Lily's involvement, and he had respected her wishes. The official report stated simply that a local handyman had freed a bear caught in abandoned sports equipment. Interesting enough for a human interest piece, but nothing that would attract wider attention. For that, Savannah was grateful. The last thing she wanted was for her daughter to become the subject of curiosity or, worse, scientific interest. The strange stone from the park sat on her kitchen windowsill above the sink. Savannah had discovered it while gathering Lily's toys after the Rangers left. Something about it had compelled her to pick it up and bring it home, though she couldn't articulate why. In the sunlight, the markings were more visible, swirling patterns that almost resembled ancient writing. She had looked online for similar stones but found nothing that matched its unique characteristics. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Setting down her tea, Savannah lifted Lily and went to answer it. Connor Adams stood on her porch, holding a small potted plant with delicate purple flowers. "Good morning," he said, offering the plant. "Thought you might like this. It's lavender, supposed to help with sleep." Savannah accepted the gift with a small smile. "How did you know I haven't been sleeping?" "Lucky guess," Connor replied. "After what we went through, I figured you might be having the same nights I am." She invited him in, setting Lily back down with her blocks. The baby immediately crawled to Connor, pulling herself up on his pant leg and babbling excitedly. Connor bent down and gently ruffled her hair. "She's taken quite a shine to you," Savannah observed, returning to the kitchen to place the lavender on the windowsill beside the strange stone. Connor's eyes widened slightly when he noticed the stone. "Where did you find that?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "At the park, after the bears left." Savannah picked it up and handed it to him. "Have you ever seen anything like it?" Connor turned the stone over in his hands, tracing the markings with his thumb. "My grandfather had something similar," he said slowly. He was part Cherokee from his mother's side. He said stones like these were special, that they appeared when worlds overlapped. "Worlds?" Savannah asked, raising an eyebrow. "The human world and the animal world," Connor explained. He believed there were people who could move between them in a way, people who could understand animals or be understood by them. He set the stone down carefully. "I always thought they were just stories." Lily had abandoned her blocks and was now sitting at Connor's feet, staring up at him with unusual intensity. When he mentioned understanding animals, she clapped her hands together, as if in agreement. Savannah and Connor exchanged a look. "You don't really think—" she began, then shook her head. "No, that's impossible." 3 days ago, I would have said a baby helping to save a bear was impossible too, Connor pointed out. But I saw it with my own eyes. Savannah sat down at the kitchen table, suddenly needing support. Even if there was some kind of connection between Lily and the bears, that doesn't mean she has some supernatural ability. Maybe not supernatural, Connor conceded, taking the seat across from her. Maybe just different. A different way of perceiving. Lily crawled to the back door, which led to Savannah's small garden. She pulled herself up and patted the glass, making insistent noises. "She wants to go outside," Savannah said, rising to open the door. "She's been doing this constantly since the park incident." They stepped out into the garden together. It was a modest space, with herbs growing in raised beds and wildflowers along the fence line. Beyond the fence lay the beginning of the forest that stretched across the mountains surrounding Pinewood. As soon as they were outside, Lily became animated, pointing toward the trees and making excited sounds. "She's been doing this too," Savannah said, "always pointing to the woods." Connor frowned thoughtfully. "You know, there's someone you might want to talk to. Michael Hayes, the biology professor at the community college. He's been studying local wildlife for years, particularly animal communication. If anyone might have insight into what happened with the bears, it would be him." Savannah hesitated. "I don't know. I'm not sure I want to involve anyone else in this." "Michael's different," Connor assured her. "He's not the type to sensationalize or exploit. He truly cares about understanding the natural world." Before Savannah could respond, something at the edge of the forest caught their attention. A deer had emerged from the trees, a doe with a spotted fawn at her side. What was unusual was how close they had come to the house. Wild deer typically kept their distance from human dwellings. Lily squealed with delight, bouncing in Savannah's arms and reaching toward the animals. To Savannah's astonishment, the doe took several steps closer, her large eyes fixed on Lily. The fawn followed, its spindly legs wobbling slightly. "Don't move," Connor whispered. "This is extremely unusual behavior." The doe approached the garden fence, stopping just on the other side. She stood perfectly still, watching Lily with what seemed like curiosity. The fawn nuzzled against its mother, equally focused on the human baby. Lily made a series of soft cooing sounds, different from her usual babbling. The doe's ears twitched, and she made a gentle snorting sound in response. For nearly a minute, this strange interaction continued, the baby and the deer seemingly communicating in some primal language neither adult could comprehend. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the deer turned and bounded back into the forest, the fawn following close behind. Lily watched them go, then turned to look at her mother with a satisfied expression, as if to say, "See, I told you." Savannah met Connor's gaze, seeing in his eyes the same mixture of wonder and unease that she felt. "Maybe we should talk to Professor Hayes after all," she said quietly. That afternoon, after Connor had left with a promise to arrange a meeting with Michael Hayes, Savannah sat on her porch swing with Lily napping in her arms. The encounter with the deer had left her with more questions than answers. Was her daughter truly different in some fundamental way? And if so, what did that mean for her future? The sound of tires on gravel interrupted her thoughts. A sleek black SUV with government plates pulled into her driveway. Savannah tensed, instinctively holding Lily closer. She hadn't called any authorities about the deer, and the bear incident had been resolved. Who would be visiting her now? A tall woman in a charcoal suit stepped out of the vehicle. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and she wore silver-rimmed glasses that caught the sunlight. She approached the porch with confident strides, a leather briefcase in one hand. "Mrs. Reed," she called. "My name is Dr. Avery Johnson. I'm with the Department of Environmental Research. I was hoping we could talk." Savannah stood, careful not to wake Lily. "What is this about?" Dr. Johnson's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Just following up on the bear incident from earlier this week. May I come in?" Something in the woman's tone made Savannah uneasy. How had a simple wildlife encounter attracted the attention of a government department she'd never even heard of? "I've already given my statement to the rangers," Savannah said. "I'm not sure what else I can tell you." "Oh, I think there's quite a bit more to the story," Dr. Johnson replied, her gaze shifting to Lily, "particularly concerning your daughter's involvement." A chill ran through Savannah's body. She hadn't mentioned Lily's role to anyone except Connor. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, struggling to keep her voice steady. Dr. Johnson sighed, removing her glasses. "Mrs. Reed, let's not play games. We have satellite imagery of the entire incident. We know exactly what happened in that park, including your daughter's interaction with the bear cub." She replaced her glasses, her expression softening slightly. "I'm not here to cause problems, quite the opposite. I'm here because your daughter may be very special, and we'd like to understand why." Savannah's mind raced. Satellite imagery? Who were these people, and how much did they actually know? One thing was certain. She wasn't about to hand Lily over to some unknown government agency for study. "I think you should leave," Savannah said firmly. "If you want to talk to me, you can contact my lawyer first." Dr. Johnson didn't move. "Mrs. Reed, you should know that what happened with your daughter isn't an isolated incident. There have been others, children with unusual connections to wildlife. We've been monitoring these cases for years." "Monitoring," Savannah repeated, anger rising to replace her fear. "You mean spying on children? What gives you the right?" "National security," Dr. Johnson replied simply. "When humans develop enhanced abilities to communicate with or control animals, it raises certain concerns." "She's a baby, not a security threat," Savannah snapped, her arms tightening around Lily, who stirred in her sleep. Dr. Johnson held up a placating hand. "I understand your protectiveness. Any mother would feel the same. But please consider this from our perspective. A child who can influence the behavior of wild predators. That ability could have profound implications, both beneficial and concerning." She reached into her briefcase and withdrew a business card. "I'll leave this with you. When you're ready to talk, and believe me, at some point you will be, call me." She placed the card on the porch railing and turned to leave. As she reached her vehicle, she paused and looked back. "One more thing, Mrs. Reed. Be careful who you trust with information about your daughter's abilities. Not everyone will have her best interests at heart." With that cryptic warning, she slid into the SUV and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust and a host of new worries in her wake. Savannah stood frozen on the porch, her mind whirling with implications. If this government agency was watching them, who else might be? And what did Dr. Johnson mean about other children with similar abilities? Lily woke with a small cry, her tiny face scrunching up in distress. It was as if she had sensed her mother's anxiety, even in sleep. Savannah bounced her gently, murmuring soothing words she didn't fully believe herself. "It's okay, baby girl," she whispered. "Everything's going to be fine." But as she watched the SUV disappear down the road, Savannah knew their lives had irrevocably changed. The peaceful existence she had built in Pinewood, the quiet days in the park, the simple pleasures of watching her daughter grow, all of that was now threatened by forces she barely understood. She picked up Dr. Johnson's card from the railing. The Department of Environmental Research logo looked official, but something about it struck her as odd. The phone number had no area code, and the address listed was a simple P.O. box in Washington, D.C., inside the house. Savannah placed Lily in her playpen and reached for her phone. Her finger hovered over Connor's number, but she hesitated. Dr. Johnson's warning about trust echoed in her mind. Connor had been her friend for years, had helped save the bear, had shown nothing but kindness to her and Lily. But could she be absolutely certain of his motives? Instead, she did a quick internet search for Department of Environmental Research. The results were sparse and vague. A few mentions in government budget documents, a brief description of environmental monitoring programs, but nothing substantial about their work with wildlife or children. For a government agency, they maintained a remarkably low profile. Next, she searched for Dr. Avery Johnson Environmental Research. Again, almost nothing came up, just a single mention in an academic paper about wildlife behavioral patterns. It was as if the woman barely existed in official records. Savannah's unease deepened. She looked at Lily, who was happily stacking rings on a colorful plastic post, seemingly unaware of the storm gathering around her. How could she protect her daughter from forces she couldn't even identify? A soft sound from the kitchen drew her attention. The strange stone on the windowsill had fallen over, though there was no breeze to explain its movement. As Savannah approached to right it, she noticed something astonishing. The markings were glowing with a faint blue light. She picked it up carefully. The stone was warm to the touch, vibrating slightly against her palm. The glowing pattern seemed to shift and change, forming new configurations before her eyes. "What in the world?" she whispered. As if in response, a series of unusual bird calls sounded from just outside the window. Savannah looked out to see 3 ravens perched on her garden fence, their glossy black feathers reflecting the afternoon sun. Ravens weren't uncommon in the mountains, but she had never seen them so close to the house before, and certainly not acting with such apparent purpose. The birds seemed to be watching her, their intelligent eyes fixed on the glowing stone in her hand. One of them tilted its head and let out another call, a complex series of clicks and caws that sounded almost like language. From her playpen, Lily responded with her own series of sounds, mimicking the raven's call with surprising accuracy. The birds grew excited, flapping their wings and calling more loudly. Lily laughed with delight, repeating the strange sounds. The stone in Savannah's hand grew warmer, the glow intensifying. The patterns now definitely resembled writing of some kind, ancient symbols flowing and changing like water. Suddenly, Savannah could understand snippets of meaning in the raven's calls. Not words exactly, but concepts, emotions, intentions. They were trying to convey something urgent, something about danger and protection and choices that needed to be made. The realization hit her with stunning force. The stone was somehow translating, bridging the gap between human understanding and animal communication. And Lily, it seemed, didn't need the stone at all. She understood the ravens naturally, instinctively. The birds fell silent as a vehicle approached the house. Savannah recognized the sound of Connor's truck. The ravens took flight, circling once above the garden before disappearing into the forest. As they left, the stone's glow faded, leaving it looking ordinary once more. Savannah quickly placed it in a kitchen drawer just as a knock sounded at the door. She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself, then went to answer it. Connor stood on the porch, his expression grave. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "Michael Hayes is missing." "Missing?" Savannah repeated, ushering him inside. What do you mean? I went to his office at the college to set up our meeting, Connor explained, following her to the kitchen. His department said he hasn't been seen since yesterday. His car is still in the faculty parking lot, but there's no sign of him. And his office... Connor hesitated. It looked like there had been a struggle. Papers everywhere, a broken chair. A cold knot formed in Savannah's stomach. Did you call the police? The campus security is handling it, Connor said. But there's something else. He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. I found this on his desk. The image showed a stone identical to the one currently hidden in Savannah's kitchen drawer. The same size, the same unusual markings. Written in pen beside it was a single sentence, "They're coming for the children." Savannah sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. A woman came by earlier, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Avery Johnson. She said she was from something called the Department of Environmental Research. She knew about Lily and the bears. Said they had satellite images. Connor frowned. That doesn't make sense. Why would an environmental department be monitoring a public park with satellites? She said there were other children like Lily, that they'd been monitoring cases for years. Savannah shuddered. She left her card, but when I looked up her department online, there was hardly any information about them. Let me see the card, Connor said. Savannah retrieved it from the living room and handed it to him. Connor examined it carefully, his frown deepening. This isn't a standard government card, he said finally. The paper quality is wrong, and federal departments always include their seal, not just a text logo. So she was lying about who she works for? Maybe, Connor conceded. Or maybe this department isn't as official as she made it sound. He looked around the kitchen. Where's the stone you found? I want to compare it to the one in the photo. Savannah hesitated. Should she tell Connor about what had just happened with the ravens? About how the stone had glowed and somehow allowed her to understand them? Dr. Johnson's warning about trust echoed in her mind again. But if she couldn't trust Connor, who had risked his life to save the bear, who could she trust? Before she could decide, Lily let out a happy squeal from her playpen. They both turned to see her pointing excitedly at the kitchen window. A large raven had returned and was perched on the sill, pecking gently at the glass. Connor stared in amazement. What's going on with that bird? The raven continued pecking, its movements deliberate. Savannah realized it wasn't random. The bird was tapping out a pattern, the same pattern over and over. Lily began mimicking the sound, tapping her hands against the playpen in the exact same rhythm. The raven stopped, watching the baby with unmistakable intelligence in its dark eyes. Savannah, Connor said slowly. That bird is trying to communicate. As if confirming his words, the raven spread its wings and flew to the back door, landing on the small porch outside. It pecked at the door handle, then looked back at them expectantly. I think it wants us to follow it, Savannah said, voicing the absurd thought aloud. Connor nodded, his expression a mixture of wonder and concern. I think you're right, but the question is, should we? Savannah looked from the raven to Lily, who was bouncing excitedly in her playpen, clearly eager to follow the bird. Then she thought of the missing professor, the strange woman from the shadowy government department, and the identical stones with their cryptic markings. I don't think we have a choice, she said quietly. Whatever is happening, whatever Lily's connection to these animals means, we need answers. And right now, that bird seems more likely to provide them than any human. Connor took a deep breath. All right then, but we go prepared. He removed a small pocket knife from his belt and placed it in his pocket. And we stay together, no matter what. Savannah nodded, gathering Lily from the playpen and grabbing a small backpack. She quickly filled it with diapers, snacks, a first aid kit, and a flashlight. As an afterthought, she retrieved the stone from the drawer and slipped it into the outside pocket. "Ready?" Connor asked, holding the back door open. The raven watched them with what seemed like approval as they stepped onto the porch. As soon as they were outside, it took flight, circling above them before heading toward the forest edge. "Here we go," Savannah whispered, holding Lily close as they began following the bird into the unknown. The raven led them along a barely visible path into the forest. Sunlight filtered through the canopy above, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The woods were alive with sounds, the rustle of leaves, the chatter of squirrels, the distant call of other birds. But there was something different about how Savannah perceived these sounds now. Since her brief connection with the ravens through the stone, the forest no longer felt like background noise. It felt like a conversation she was only beginning to understand. Lily seemed perfectly content, her eyes wide with wonder as she took in the sights and sounds around them. Occasionally, she would point at something, a particular tree, a patch of wildflowers, a butterfly, and make soft sounds that seemed purposeful rather than random. "She's been in these woods before?" Connor asked quietly as they walked. "Never," Savannah replied. "I've always kept to the park and the garden. The forest seemed too dangerous for a baby." Connor nodded thoughtfully. "Yet she seems completely at ease here, almost like she knows where we're going." The raven stayed just ahead of them, periodically stopping to ensure they were following. After about 20 minutes of walking, the path began to slope upward, leading them deeper into the mountains. "We should be getting close to the old logging road," Connor observed. "It hasn't been used in years, but it runs all the way up to—" He stopped abruptly, holding out an arm to halt Savannah. Just ahead, the underbrush moved, and a large shape emerged onto the path. Savannah's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the distinctive form of a mountain lion, its tawny body sleek and powerful, its eyes alert and focused directly on them. Connor slowly reached for his pocket knife, though they both knew it would be useless against such a predator. Savannah clutched Lily tighter, prepared to run even though she knew they couldn't outpace the big cat. But instead of charging, the mountain lion simply sat down on the path, its tail swishing slowly behind it. The raven descended from a nearby branch, landing fearlessly beside the big cat. The two animals regarded each other briefly, then turned their attention back to the humans. "This isn't normal," Connor whispered. "Mountain lions avoid humans, especially in daylight." Before Savannah could respond, Lily let out a series of sounds, not her usual baby babble, but something more structured, almost like the raven's calls, but with a deeper tonality. To their astonishment, the mountain lion responded with a low rumble that wasn't quite a growl. The stone in Savannah's backpack began to warm, its heat noticeable even through the fabric. Without thinking, she reached for it, holding it tightly in her free hand. Immediately, fragments of meaning filtered into her consciousness. Not full sentences, but concepts, intentions, emotions, danger, humans, taking, help, follow. The mountain lion rose and turned, walking a few paces up the path before looking back at them expectantly. The raven took flight, following the big cat. "They want us to come with them," Savannah said, certainty in her voice. Connor looked at her in disbelief. "How do you know that?" She held up the stone, which now glowed faintly in her palm. "It's translating somehow, not perfectly, but enough to get the general idea." "That's impossible," Connor said, but his tone lacked conviction. After what they had already witnessed, The boundaries of impossible were rapidly shifting. "We've come this far," Savannah said, "and they haven't tried to harm us. I think they're trying to help." Connor hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but at the first sign of trouble, we turn back." "Agreed?" "Agreed." They continued following their unusual guides, the path growing steeper and narrower as they ascended into the mountains. The forest changed around them, the deciduous trees giving way to pines and firs, the undergrowth becoming sparser. The air felt different too, cooler and charged with an energy Savannah couldn't explain. After another half-hour of climbing, they reached a small clearing surrounded by ancient oak trees. In the center stood a circle of stones, each about waist-high, weathered by centuries of exposure to the elements. The mountain lion walked to the center of the circle and sat down, its golden eyes fixed on Lily. The raven perched on one of the standing stones, waiting. "What is this place?" Savannah asked, her voice hushed. "I've never seen it before," Connor replied, "and I've hiked these mountains my entire life." As they hesitated at the edge of the clearing, more animals began to emerge from the forest. 2 deer, several raccoons, a red fox, and more ravens joining the first. They positioned themselves around the perimeter of the stone circle, creating a living boundary. Lily squirmed in Savannah's arms, clearly wanting to be put down. Reluctantly, Savannah set her daughter on the soft grass of the clearing, ready to snatch her up at the first sign of danger. But instead of crawling toward the animals as Savannah feared, Lily simply sat where she was placed, looking around with solemn curiosity. The stone in Savannah's hand pulsed with warmth and light. Its glow was answered by similar lights appearing within the standing stones of the circle, faint at first, then growing stronger. The markings on each stone began to illuminate, revealing patterns that matched those on the smaller stone she held. A sense of ancient power hung in the air, neither threatening nor benevolent, simply present and watchful. Savannah felt as though they had stepped into a place between worlds, a nexus where the boundaries separating humans from nature had grown thin. The mountain lion rose and approached Lily with slow, deliberate steps. Savannah tensed, but Connor placed a restraining hand on her arm. "Wait," he whispered. "Look at Lily. She's not afraid." Indeed, the baby seemed perfectly calm as the massive predator drew near. When the mountain lion was just a few feet away, it lowered its body to the ground and extended its head toward Lily. With a delighted giggle, Lily reached out and placed her tiny hand on the big cat's nose. At that touch, the glow from the stones intensified, bathing the clearing in blue-white light. The stone in Savannah's hand became almost too hot to hold, and she nearly dropped it. But as she adjusted her grip, something extraordinary happened. The partial understanding she had experienced earlier suddenly expanded. The animal sounds around them transformed into clear, intelligible communication. "The child speaks our language." The mountain lion's thoughts resonated in Savannah's mind. "She is one of the bridge makers. We have waited many seasons for another to come." "The child is in danger," added the raven's sharper, quicker thoughts. "The takers know she exists. They seek her, as they have sought others like her." "Takers?" Savannah found herself responding mentally, the stone somehow enabling two-way communication. "Do you mean the people who came to my house? The Department of Environmental Research?" A ripple of agitation passed through the assembled animals. "They use many names," the fox's thoughts flickered into her awareness, "but they are the ones who took the man of knowledge from his den of learning." "Professor Hayes?" Connor said beside her, and Savannah realized he was experiencing the same translation effect. "They've taken Professor Hayes. But why?" "He knew too much," came the collective response from the ravens. He discovered the ancient connection. the language that once allowed all living beings to communicate. He found the stones of memory. Like this one? Savannah held up the glowing stone. Yes, the mountain lion confirmed. The stones remember the old language, from before humans forgot how to listen. They help those who cannot speak naturally as your cub does. Savannah looked at Lily, who was now surrounded by curious animal faces, the deer sniffing her hair, the raccoons examining her clothes with dexterous paws, the fox sitting attentively beside her. The baby seemed completely at ease, occasionally making sounds that the animals clearly understood. "What are the bridge makers?" Connor asked. "Why are they important?" The eldest raven, its feathers tinged with gray, stepped forward. "In each generation, a few are born who remember the old way of speaking, the language shared by all living creatures before humans separated themselves from the web of life. These rare ones can rebuild the bridges between your kind and ours. They are precious to both worlds, but dangerous to those who seek control," added the mountain lion. "Those who fear what would happen if humans and animals could once again understand each other fully." Savannah thought of the bear cub and Lily's inexplicable connection with it, of the deer in her garden, of the ravens trying to warn them. It all began to make a terrible kind of sense. The department, the takers, they're collecting children like Lily. The thought filled her with cold dread. What do they do with them? A wave of sorrow passed through the animal gathering. Some are taken to places of stone and metal where they are studied, the mountain lion explained. Their gift is examined, tested, sometimes used. Few ever return to their families or to the wild places where we could reach them. "That's monstrous," Connor said, anger evident in his voice. "They're kidnapping children." "Not in their understanding." The fox's thoughts were tinged with bitter amusement. "They believe they protect their kind from the unknown, from change, from the reawakening of ancient bonds that might threaten their dominion over the natural world." "Professor Hayes," Savannah said suddenly. "You said they took him. Is he still alive? Can we help him?" "The man of knowledge lives," one of the deer confirmed. "He is held in a place not far from here, in the valley beyond the mountain. A place of machines and barriers where few of us can go. A research facility," Connor guessed, "probably disguised as something innocent, a weather station or communications outpost." "We must get him out," Savannah said firmly, "and we need to expose what these people are doing. If they're taking children—" Her words trailed off as she looked at Lily, happily playing with a young raccoon. The realization of how much danger her daughter was in struck her with renewed force. These government agents, or whoever they really were, would return for Lily, and next time they might not be so polite about it. "We can help," the mountain lion offered, surprising them both. "We have watched the place where they keep the man of knowledge. We know its weaknesses, its rhythms, and we have helped others escape from the takers before." "Others?" Connor asked. "You mean other children?" "Yes," the raven confirmed, "though not all could be saved. The takers are clever and persistent." Savannah and Connor exchanged a look of determination. "Tell us everything you know," Savannah said. "We're going to need a plan." As the animals began sharing their knowledge of the secret facility, its location, its security measures, the patterns of the guards, Savannah felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. The world had changed dramatically in the span of a few days. The boundaries she had always accepted as fixed between humans and animals, between the possible and impossible, had been revealed as permeable, fluid. And at the center of it all was Lily, her remarkable daughter, who had somehow been born with the ability to breach those boundaries naturally. A bridge maker, the animals called her. A child who could potentially help heal the ancient rift between humanity and the natural world, if they could protect her from those who feared such a reconciliation. The glow from the stone circle began to fade as twilight approached. The animals grew restless, many needing to return to their territories before full dark. But before they dispersed, the mountain lion approached Savannah one final time. "Protect the young bridge maker." Its thoughts resonated with fierce intensity. "She is more important than you yet understand. When the time comes, bring her back to this place. There is more she must learn, more she must remember." "I will," Savannah promised, holding Lily close. "Whatever it takes." The mountain lion nodded once, then melted back into the forest, followed by the other larger animals. Only the raven remained, perched on a nearby branch. "We should go," Connor said, eyeing the darkening sky. "It'll be difficult to find our way back in the dark." "The winged one will guide you," came a final thought from the departing fox. "Trust in the stone and in your cub's gift. The old ways are awakening again, whether the takers wish it or not." With that, the animal conclave ended, leaving Savannah and Connor with a wealth of information, a daring plan, and the weight of responsibility heavy on their shoulders. As they began the journey back down the mountain, following the raven's lead, Savannah felt both terrified and strangely exhilarated. The world was not what she had believed it to be, and her daughter, her special, extraordinary Lily, stood at the threshold of changes that might reshape the relationship between humans and the natural world forever. If they could keep her safe from those who would prevent such a transformation at any cost. The raven led them back through the darkening forest with uncanny precision. Lily had fallen asleep in Savannah's arms, her small face peaceful despite the momentous events of the day. Connor walked beside them, occasionally using his phone's flashlight to illuminate particularly tricky sections of the path. "Do you believe all this?" Savannah asked quietly, careful not to wake Lily. "About bridge makers and ancient languages and secret government agencies?" Connor was silent for a moment, his expression thoughtful in the dim light. 24 hours ago I would have said no, but after what we just experienced..." He shook his head in wonder. "I don't think we have the luxury of disbelief anymore, not when Lily's safety is at stake." "What about Professor Hayes?" "Do you